were you all politically motivated working on it, or were you doing it because it was, you know, for many of you, apart from you being so precocious, for many of you, it was the sort of beginning of your career in
I was committed to the overthrow of socialism.
Socialism? Well, you picked the wrong phrase.
You know,
Steve.
Ian, I've always liked you for that.
How much fun was it to make?
Really good fun.
But it was.
I mean, I think for the producers and
Hell for them.
I think it was really hard because
good fun.
we got the fun, we got to write it, we got to see it happen, and then when it went out, we said, "Oh, you've messed it up," and you know, gave them a hard time. But it was a hoot.
Steve and I had, you know, it was great fun, wasn't it? John Sessions.
Have you encountered each other before? I'm presuming that
We
you
met her
have.
several times, didn't we, Roy? I mean, can I also say that I am not only the hero of Spitting Image, but I am also the hero of Crossroads, because for those of us who worked on the show, that is where we recorded the show. We recorded the show in Noel Gordon's office.
How did you go about finding the voices for the...
Well, I remember going up to John and saying, would you mind if they made Alan Bennett? Because I come from Leeds and I always fancied doing Alan Bennett, so I worked on it and everything. And what was really lovely about John, and he said, oh, do you know, the problem is, Steve, I really like Alan Bennett. Anyway, he got made, and the thing about the Alan Bennett and the Thora Hird, which Kate Robbins did, was the fact it sort of leavened the show, you know what I mean? So you could have these very political, bouncy sketches and hitting and Punch and Judy and all the rest of it. And then you'd have this little moment of sort of Asda Green Label and eating Jabby Dodgers.
Well,
was it
actually,
one of
in
the
the film earlier, I mean, there's rather unfairly, it said when Grant and Naylor appeared on the scene, the show went down market.
Yeah.
Actually, Nick and I had been working on the show from day one.
Desperately
thinking we
trying
were
to
up
take
market,
it down market.
and they suddenly got to do Larry Gielgud and Alan Bennett and National Treasures. And in fact, the show sort of went up market in a lot of ways.
Was it quite competitive in terms of who was writing what piece and who was claiming what voice? I mean, how did you decide? How did you decide who got the voice of?
Terribly embarrassing.
It was embarrassing.
I mean, everyone wanted to be Margaret Thatcher, I would have thought, because she was on the most.
No, but he was Margaret
Yes.
Thatcher.
But
But
did
a
that-
new
did-
voice would come
A new
up.
voice was a tough
It was
day.
a literally audition,
It was audition.
in front of a microphone. We'd all do it.
Yeah, and we'd all do it in order.
And everyone would look, you know.
it was
And when John was there, he'd pace around looking at you, going,
I tried the Alan Bennett voice, but I didn't get it.
And did you have... did you have understudies aside from Ian? Because, I mean, you know, what would happen if you had tonsillitis or something?
yeah, I loved it. I loved it then. I'd do people... I didn't do Hasse. I did Kinnock a couple of times. I loved doing it.
Did you get to do...
Well, the one I'm sort of I'm most proud of it really isn't Thatcher. It's Robert Roncy, because it was what Harry was saying. Because my Robert Roncy impression wasn't that accurate. And also Robert Roncy spoke incredibly slowly, and it would have been a disaster to have the puppet like that. So we had a chat with John, and sort of, because he was a little puppet in the same way, we sort of made him like that. He sounded nothing like it, but it was sort of truthful to it.
Yeah.
And he was a little 7-year-old boy who believed in Santa Claus, and really, you know, if there wasn't a Santa Claus, who'd feed the reindeer?
Do you think that they're a blander lot these days, Roy? Do you think that they're a blander lot
No, I
these
don't.
days?
No, I don't. I mean, I think if
come
the
on, they are
if the
right,
if the
they are.
milieu was right, it's not the politicians who've changed; it's the atmosphere of the country has changed. I mean, I don't think it would be acceptable. I don't think they found it as funny now as they did 20 years ago. But if they were in a mood to accept it, then I think the material is there. As I say.
What do you mean that they wouldn't find it as funny, they wouldn't accept it? You
Well,
mean...
because it was new. It was new. It was sensational in that nobody's ever been that rude to politicians before. And it's a great
Not on
sport.
television.
Not on television. No, only in private. Only in private.
Oh, no, and in newsprint.
Yes, I mean, people had been that rude and done that sort of stuff, but it hadn't had a huge prime-time audience.
Exactly.
And that was
Well, that was the
tough.
week had the same thing in the
But
60s.
that was
Don't
we didn't
mention
have
that,
the
it gets
affront of
really
it.
irate.
You're too young to remember it. But,
Yes.
Could I say a few words
Oh,
from,
do please.
from beyond the grave? I think the problem is that, you know, Margaret Thatcher was an incredibly conviction politician. That is the point. David Cameron is not a conviction politician. He wants to be everyone's friend. He's too friendly. You know, he's the sort of man that would call John the Baptist Jack. You don't want have conviction.
You are admitting a terrible fault or terrible weakness. I mean, you're admitting that what mattered was the sound of the voices. Now, the sound of the voices is very important, but what mattered really was the portrayal of the people.
Was it?
Well,
But,
but if you did Miliband, obviously you'd need that very adenoidal sound. But the thing about Miliband as well is he stresses the wrong word in every speech because he's simply trying too hard. You know, it's not just about the voice. He's trying too hard, and he can't do it.
You
and
just disproved your own point, though, haven't you? Because here you are
Oh,
doing
well, shut up,
Miliband.
then.
Yeah.
But I wanted to ask you another thing before you
do
shut
David
up.
Miliband.
Is it right that at the beginning the thought was to have the puppeteers also do the voices?
Yeah.
And that you were one of the people who tried that?
Yeah, well, we trained up. And actually, on the clip, one of the clips you've seen, is you can actually see the microphone actually in one of the puppeteers on the head, because that's how we did. It proved impossible, and then all the sketches had to be pre-recorded, so that you know that you could carry on working on the scenes and all the rest of it. But going back to, we'll both do Cameron and we'll see. But you know, the
Go
problem.
on, yes,
I'll have a go,
please.
but it's not very good. We've got
not
to get
fussy.
Britain back to work. We've got to find a way of doing that. And he's got a very slightly posh voice, and he
Slightly posh.
well, no.
Your standards have changed since the old days.
But he's like a son of Catherine Whitehorn, who'd sort of, you know, gone off to a grammar school and tried to dumb down his posh voice.
Now, you know, every time it rains, Cameron comes on telly and says it's rained and we've got to do something about it. You know, and
He's everywhere.
just
everywhere.
would never happen.
Yeah.
It's like watching morning television all day long. You know, and there was a gravitas that isn't there, so there was something to sort of get hold of.
And on that depressing note, I'd like to thank all of you. It's time for our next panel. Thank you very much, Lord Hattersley.